Hello everybody, this is Ms. Gilchrist and I'm going to do a video to show you how to do the second part to the work we did yesterday, which is how to find the domain and range for each of those graphs that the transformations that we graphed. So I'm going to switch over to the paper document that I have and it's still here. Let me wait for a minute and let me get this over here. Okay, I think I've got it set up so that you can see it well enough. So we went through this yesterday, how to, and this is on the video if you need to find this from Tuesday. And what we want to do then is to look at this graph and describe the domain and the range of what this looks like. So domain, if you remember, it's the set of all x's. So I'm looking for the x's, and the x's run left to right. So the x-axis is the one that runs horizontally. So I'm gonna look at this graph, and I'm gonna think how far to the left and how far to the right. And you got to remember that sometimes the answer is forever. So let's look at this one, and I'm going to start from the center of it. And how far to the left? And that one's forever. How far to the right? Forever. So this one, the arrows kind of indicate that it's going off this way and this way. So when it's forever, forever, it's you can write the fancy R, and what it stands for is we're saying all real numbers. But when I do, now I'm going to do the range, and the range is the word that we use to describe the set of all, are you thinking it? Y's, yes. And the y's run up and down. So I'm going to think how far down and how far up. Now when the answer is not forever, I'm going to switch to the question, where does it start? So how far down? Well, it doesn't go down forever, it goes up forever. How far up? Goes up and up, it goes up forever and forever. But where does it start? It starts right here. The y values, they start at -1. And then from -1, and I'm looking up and down, I'm going to think, do they get greater or do they get smaller? Are these values going up or going down? Well, it's going up, so this is going to be greater. So from -1, it's getting bigger. Now I have one more thing to do, is to decide, is -1 included or not? So at -1, if you see either you see a point or a solid line that passes through, it's included. So the y's are greater than or equal to -1, or they might say it, all real numbers greater than or equal to -1. So this little line says it can be equal to -1, or it's included. So I'm going to do a couple more with you. Get this out of the way. And let's look at this one. We did the graph yesterday. And now we're just going to look at the domain and range. So the domain, I'm going to look left to right. How far to the left? Yeah, that's forever. How far to the right? Forever. Forever, forever is all real numbers. Well, that's another way to abbreviate numbers, NOS. Now, there is another way they write it. It goes from -infinity, ooh, that's sideways, to positive infinity. You don't need to learn that one, but that's just an added little bonus way to write it. Usually you'll see it written out with words, all real numbers. So now the range, I'm going to look up and down. And I want to keep my eye on the y, on the number line that's the y-axis. So it goes up forever, but it doesn't go down. So I'm going to, instead of, so now I'm going to ask, where does it start? So I'm going to keep my eye here on this number line. So what's the number line on the y, where this is starting? So on the y, it's a 0. Now it's a -1 on the x, but we're not talking about the x's. I'm talking about the y's. So you want to focus in again on what's the number on this number line. And that would be a 0 right in the middle. Now from the 0, is it getting greater or less? Greater or less? So it's getting greater. One last thing I have to look at is the 0 included? And is that open or closed? So I'm going to close it, which means that the 0 is included. So this one has a domain of all real numbers, but the range are all numbers greater than or equal to 0. Well, let's look at one more, and then you can do the rest on your own. This one, and it's a little bit different because it's got this little piece of, it's not a complete line really. It looks kind of like half a line. But I'm going to use the same set of questions. For a domain, how far to the left and how far to the right? And then I'm gonna ask, if it's not forever, then I'll ask, where does it start? So, well, how far to the left? Well, it doesn't really go to the left. How far to the right? It goes right forever. So where does it start? Well, it starts right here when I look left to right. And then I want to keep my eye, this is the x, so I want to keep my eye on the x-axis, or the x number line. And so the number right there for the x, yes, is 0. So the domain is a story about the x's, and from the x's, is it getting greater or less? So when you're looking left and right, the numbers get bigger going to the right, and they get less going to the left. So this one is getting greater. And is 0 included? Yes, so I'm going to add the line. Let's take a look at the range. The range, again, we're going to look up and down. How far down does it go? Well, I drew it like it's scooping up, but it really is going every time it's going further down, further down. So I wasn't, we don't have to be perfect artists here, but it's going to keep going down and down and down. So it goes down forever, but it doesn't go up forever. So where does it start? This is the story of the y's. So the y's are starting here at -2. And then from the -2, is it getting greater or less? Is it going up from here or down? Well, this one is going down. So this one is less than -2. And what about that -2? Can I include it? Yes, we're going to include that one. So that should get you started. What you need to do is go ahead and add this piece. There's space enough to write on it, or add your text box, however you're going to do your answers. And just tell me about the domain and range for all of, on this page, and up through number 9. Now these you're going to write equations. So let me just write one with you. For the absolute value, so they're going to give us the parent function. So this parent function is absolute value. And then they're going to give us a description of the transformation. And we need to write the equation of the transformed function f of x. Transform just means changed. How did it change? So I know it's going to start f of x equals. That's what it wants me to call it. So I have to go through this process and think through it. The first thing I want to think is, where does it start? So what is for the absolute value, where does the equation start? Well, it starts with f of x equals, and then we have the x in the bars. Now here's where, if you forget, you're going to go back to your notes. If you don't have it memorized. So if you didn't know that, now I've been doing this for many years, so it's stuck in my brain. And if it's not stuck in your brain yet, that's okay. You can either use your notes that are from week 2 of Wednesday. That's when you guys worked on that lesson. But here I see absolute value. I posted this sheet also for you on yesterday's work. So I know that's where the equation starts. Now that tells me about the graph, but we're focusing right now on the equation. Now you also have a cleaned up, nicer version of this chart also that was posted on yesterday's work. Mostly today, you're just finishing things from that's posted under Tuesday, but we're just adding this layer of domain and range. And I'm just going to give you some pointers on this one. So we've got the starting point for absolute value. We need to put the x in the bars. Now, in order to shift it, do a vertical shift up. Now, where is that up going to go? Now, up is for a plus. So I'm going to go +5. And then I need to make sure I put it outside or at the end. Now, when we're talking about absolute value, it's going to go outside of the bars. So I need to add here, this is a +5, but where does it go? It goes at the end. Now I'm not putting it here yet because I'm still having to work. So I've got this one figured out. Let me go to the next part. So do a horizontal shift to the right. In order to do right, I need to put a negative sign. And where? I put it inside. Now with quadratics, it's inside parentheses. But for absolute value, it's inside the bars. So I need to put in here with the x is a right 3. So I'm going to have to put an x minus 3 in there. So my final answer will look like this. X minus 3 plus 5. So here's the part that's vertical shift up. And here's the part that's a horizontal shift to the right. Let me just say one thing about here. Shrink is the same thing as compression. If you watched the Ed puzzle from yesterday, that was in the notes in the discussion there. But shrink is just another word to say compress. There's different kinds of root. And when they don't tell you, we'll assume that this one is square root. I don't think your worksheet has this one about the exponential. Don't worry about it. I know the one you have is slightly different, and that one's fine. Don't. But do your best to work through these. Let me check your work. And again, contact me if you've got any questions. Hope you do fine.